Hey, grace and peace, grace and peace. I was supposed to come back on last night, and matter of fact, I got to see. Let me call him. I talked to G-Con, and I wanted to play a video that someone sent and let a couple of people look over it and tell me what they thought. I could have sworn we played it before, but I'll play it again just to try to get some clarity on some stuff. Jay Mac, what's good? I wanna answer email. I want to answer an email because these people, people. Matter of fact, type 1 if I'm sounding okay. I want to make sure that I'm sounding okay. I don't want to turn this thing up too high. I don't know. My thing don't sound like it normally do. I don't think. Grace and peace, Elder. How you doing, Hope? The brother said, Israelite said, well, you even admitted it. Listen to this now. You even admitted it that a lot of Freemasons have been in Christianity. That proves that Christianity is of the devil. This comes from an Israelite brother. So now I'm like, oh my goodness, these people, a lot of folk are doing too much. A lot of folk are doing too much. And I don't know if it's part of just human nature, what this religion done to these folk mind, or however you want to look at it. Because, I remember saying years ago, one thing you can't do is lump all Israelites together. Automatically, church folk ran and said that I'm an Israelite just because I made that statement. A statement of truth. And because I say, let me give you another example. I say, well, all Freemasons, I can't sit here. I'm not getting ready to sit here and say all Freemasons worship the devil, all Freemasons go to hell. Berean is a Freemason. This is just what people do. So, and that's just because I want some truth for the record. We got to have truth. I want truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. So for the brother that is a little bit confused, in that Freemasonry haven't touched the Hebrew Israelite movement, this great awakening that comes from Yah. I said, all right, we're going to deal with this. I've been telling folk when we deal with this in a series that I've been doing, when we deal with this, I see Freemasonry among Rastafarians and the Haile Selassie movement, Ethiopians calling themselves Israel, Haile Selassie going to Jamaica, and Freemasons behind that, the whole Marcus Garvey movement, the conscious movement with Dr. Ben and them, One West. When One West came on the scene, 1969, when, what's this other dude named, not Bivens, what's the other guy named, when he broke out from Matthew, y'all know who Matthew Wentworth was, right? When he broke out from him in 1969 and they started One West, then they came up with the chart and all of that stuff. I'm going to give y'all some doctrines because that's from Harlem also. So I'm going to make sure I give y'all some doctrine and some history so there won't be no confusion among none of us. Oh, I don't want no confusion. But if you think you ain't been touched, and I'm talking about this camp stuff, if you think you ain't been touched, you gravely deceived. You deceive like the Mormon Church is deceived. Mormon Church gonna have all these temple ritual. The whole temple ritual is based on Freemasonry, and Joseph Smith was a Freemason. His father was a Freemason. His brother was a Freemason, and they turn around and they tell you get whispered a name that don't no man know but yourself, because everybody got a secret name, and that's the name that you're gonna use when you get the glory. That's a whole nother thing. I'm gonna deal with Mormonism and Joseph Smith and how Freemasonry been in there. And later on this evening, I'm gonna explain, because I think I gotta explain this whole thing to people. But to be honest, some people don't need to hear everything. Some folk don't need to hear everything. When we deal with this subject, I'm going to try to slow down and explain everything. Later on, I'm going to deal with Enoch, because I'm going to deal with Enoch and the Royal Arch. I'm going to explain to y'all, because I said before how in Freemasonry, in the occult, how they would weave in and out the Bible. The Bible says that King Hiram sent a builder and sent some things, material for Solomon to help him build his temple. We see that in the Bible. Then in the occult tradition, they would weave out to the story of Hiram Mabith coming from coming from, he put the two names together, Anderson, the Scottish guy that wrote Anderson's Constitution for Freemasonry. So they would weave in and out. So a lot of occultists would have Bible stories or would refer to the Bible. Then they'll start talking about stuff we ain't never heard. Thank you, Bivens. When he pulled out from Matthew Wentworth and he started One West. We're going to talk about One West, and we're going to talk about all this stuff, because we got to make sure that we right and exact with everything. Let us all tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So when we start dealing with this, they would weave in and they would weave out. And I'm going to show you how important the Book of Enoch was. Now, what's the guy named James Bruce? Put his name in there, that brought Enoch back from Ethiopia. Why the church deal with it, why the church don't deal with it, and how they have a larger canon than us. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Enoch and how Enoch went to glory and Enoch communicated with the Watchers. So we're going to talk about the religion of the Watchers, and we're going to talk about secret societies and how it connects to every religion, specifically these Abrahamic faiths on this planet. All right? I'm going to pull a video up. Fair use. Before I even get into that, let me show y'all this other nonsense. Before I get into that, first of all, let me see if it's going to work, because sometimes that TikTok thing, I know I was having a problem with that before. Let me see. All right, maybe this will work. All right, look.
Which I was never charged for anything. The Department of Homeland Security never gave me my phone back and followed me for 6 months. They even came to my daughter's softball game and threatened my life twice.
Listen to this.
After that, the season was mysteriously canceled. I was then visited 10 times by beings who telepathically communicated with me and told me that I was a Pleiadian starseed, an ascended master, and that I'm part of the 144,000 here to help raise humanity's vibrations. Once I realized that there's rules to this game and they can't actually harm us, it actually has made life a little bit easier. The last 2 years have been incredibly difficult. I've lost almost everyone in my life, and it's been pretty tough to prove what I know to be true. But now I have 144,000 people who have similar stories, and it's time. After I got released from the federal building last January, which I was never charged for anything, the Department of Homeland Security never gave me my phone back and followed me for 6 months. They even came to my daughter's softball game and threatened my life twice. After that, the season was mysteriously canceled. I was then visited 10 times by beings who telepathically communicated with me and told me that I was a Pleiadian starseed, an ascended master, and that I'm part of the 144,000 here to help raise humanity's vibrations. Once I realized that there's rules to this game and they can't actually harm us, it actually has made life a little bit easier. The last 2 years have been incredibly difficult. I've lost almost everyone in my life, and it's been pretty tough to prove what I know to be true. But now I have 144,000 people who have similar stories, and it's time.
I can't make this stuff up. I can't make this stuff up. Y'all can't make this stuff up. And I'm going to tell y'all what right now, the internet ain't helping us. The internet ain't helping us. It ain't going to do nothing but get worse and worse. And I'm going to explain, as I go on, I'm going to explain some more stuff. You know, we've been back and forth with the mystical and communicating with beings and talking about the spirits, and a lot of people, they like the Bible and the Bible is good, but they really want to pull forth that speaking to the spirits and speaking to the beings. It's crazy because when I remember reading and this is not recommended reading, I just read stuff, the lost books of the Bible and the forgotten books of Eden. And in it, when we look at the story of Adam and Eve in there, we see that Satan appeared to Eve a few times. He kept manifesting himself, a spirit coming to her talking, and Adam had to keep grabbing her. Adam had to grab her and tell her, listen, what are you talking about? He got you before. Remember what God said. Adam had to take her back to the word of God, to what God said. A lot of people don't want to go to the word of God. They want to listen to the voices and deal with the beings and deal with the spirits. Now, as I show you a lot of leaders in the occult, in these religions, spirits came and spirits spoke. Spirits came and spirits said things that are diametrically opposed to the revealed word of God. But yet these false prophets, they prophesy, things don't come to pass, but yet they have full-blown religion, and religions go. What do I tell me? That there's going to be gullible people. There's going to be gullible people that's going to believe somebody. Anybody get out here, start talking about star people, 144. Somebody going to get out here and somebody's going to believe it. You're going to find an audience. Once you start talking any type of talk, there's an audience for you. Look at Baker. There's an audience for you out here. So let me get back to, I just wanted to drop that in there because that's going to come up later on. But let me get back to helping the brother that hit me in the email that was an Israelite that say Freemasonry or the churches of the devil, because Freemasonry is involved in the church, even though I shared that Clarence 13X, W.D. Fard, was influenced, Elijah Muhammad and them was influenced by Freemasonry. The Knights Templar was influenced by Freemasonry. The Mormon Church was influenced by Freemasonry. Jehovah's Witness, Charles Taze Russell, the Pyramids, influenced by Freemasonry. Even though I've been dropping all these videos, this brother hear what he want to hear. So fair use. Let me play a little bit of this right here, and I'm going to stop and make corrections. The sister's not right on everything, and y'all can also, matter of fact, I'll pull up some things so we can look at it, because everybody's not right and exact in every single thing they say. Go fact check me. It's important to fact check. Let me share this video, and then we're going to get it in. And remember, we're going to get into the history of when Bivens broke away from Wentworth and started the camps. And I'm going to explain something. Y'all tell me what came first. That's one of the questions. What came first, Israelite camps, or was Freemasonry in existence in the United States of America, in Europe, on the planet before One West? Which one came first? Fair use. Okay, let me see. Here she is. And y'all let me know if y'all hear echo.
Israel, it is past time for you to have become aware that the Freemasons have infiltrated the Abrahamic religions. The Freemasons are in each and every Abrahamic religion today, including the Hebrew Israelite movement. And Abrahamic religions are basically the religions that believe that Abraham was the father of the Israelites. You must understand that religion is not the true way to truth and light. And it's not through religion of any sort that you will find the true way of pleasing the Creator. The Israelites of old did not adhere to any type of religion. Remember that. They just adhered to the laws, commandments, and statutes that the Creator set forth for them to follow as a nation, as a people. So it's no different today than it was yesterday for the ancient Israelites, that in order to connect to the Creator, that they had to turn from their wicked ways. Also, 2 Chronicles 7:14 tells us that we must turn from our wicked ways, and we should.
Let me ask y'all a question. What is religion? What is, before we even, what is religion? Because it's a little confusion, and we hear a lot of people say, well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. And then we get other people that want to bang on religion. And we gotta kind of be careful with that. Let me pull this up. I'm gonna go right back to that, but I just want people to see some stuff. Make sure that we're all on the same page. We're going to just go to the dictionary here. I believe this thing is
religion.
All right, this is religion here. When we deal with religion, the belief in and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. Ideas about relationship between science and religion. That goes on a little bit. Let me go on to a different definition. How do you define religion? The belief in a god or a group of gods. Many people turn to religion for comfort. So religion is the belief in a supreme being. When we deal with religion, they have certain things that they do. A lot of people in religion, they pray, they have a temple, they have a sacred book, they have rites, they have rules, they have things that they have to follow from this supreme being that's looking down upon them. That's religion. If she is an Israelite, if she's a Bible believer, she follows a religion. All right, I just want to straighten that out. I'm good because we hear a lot of that stuff. So I want to go back now. I want to go back to the video. What's good, Abu? All right, let me hear. Here you go. Now watch. Now listen to the rest of it. Let's listen to what else she's saying. I'll stop as it's only 10 minutes long.
And also obey his commandments. We should humble ourselves, and we should also seek his face. This is the true way. These things do not require being in a religion or a part of any type of religious movement. You have to understand that. So if you can find me any scripture in the Bible that tells us that religion is the way to salvation, then show me that scripture. Matthew 18:6. If anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble, it would be better to have a millstone hung around his neck and to be drowned in the depth of the sea. What you see before you is one of the styles of the Freemasons robes. And recently, they've actually brought this style back. Now, over time, they kind of changed, and this is the look that they've changed it to. So there are actually different looks that the Freemasons sport. This is a photo of the Freemason apron. Now, some of the aprons that the Hebrew Israelites wear have some insignia written on it and designs and embroidery, but others are just plain. But yet, it's still an apron. A Freemasonic apron at that. What you are looking at now are the armbands that the Freemasons wear. As you can see, this Caucasian Freemason has his armbands on, and looking through these photos, you'll see that the Hebrew Israelites have their armbands on as well. Now we are going to move on to the lapel that they throw over their shoulders and wear around their chest area. You are going to see that it is the exact same lapel that this Caucasian Freemason is wearing.
Fair use.
That they are wearing as well. Do you see it? As you can see here, the Freemason apron has fringes all over it. So fringes are very important to the Freemasons. Not only that, but also the King James Version is the Bible of the Freemasons. So we're going to actually take a look at the King James Version and also fringes. One thing you need to know about King James is that on April 15th, 1601, he entered into the secret society of Freemasons. In fact, Freemasons actually credit King James for being the originator of the worldwide system of lodges in present-day Freemasonry. His version of the Bible became and still is the favorite version of Freemasons. What about that letter G? Do you know what that is? On the Freemason symbol, the G represents their god. And this is the sun god Osiris. It's
Oh yeah, she's a little off with that. We'll explain geometry and the G and what Mackey and what other Masons straight from their writings, because it's different levels of knowledge where you get different explanations. Let me explain that. When we deal with Freemasonry, Freemasonry is like going to high school. You go to the lodge, you come into Freemasonry, it's what they call a blue lodge. In the blue lodge, they have 3 degrees. Some people can work their way up from an enter apprentice. When you come in, that's the 1st degree. Fellow craft, that's the 2nd degree. 3rd degree is you become a master mason. And that makes up Freemasonry, and that's known as the blue lodge. When you out after high school, some people go to college. Some people go to college and they want degrees. They want a bachelor's, they want a master's. Some people go for higher degrees. When you deal with the higher degrees, those came later on, and those are called appendant bodies. That's like what after college, after high school, what college are you going to? A lot of people don't. Especially back in the days, a lot of people say, I'm going to work for GM. I'm going to work in a factory. I'm going to get me a city job. I'm going to corrections. And with all of those things, a high school diploma is enough for the most part to get in there. After you can work your way up afterwards and in a lot of these jobs, but a lot of people do that. So when we talk about Freemasonry, this is just the facts. Forget, we ain't even talking about the devil yet. We ain't talking about God. We ain't talking about the devil. We just talking about the order of Freemasonry. The Blue Lodge is, and most people you see that you meet in America, they say it's 3.5 million Masons out here, and 3 million of them alone are right here. So if that number is true, when you meet the average Mason just went to the Blue Lodge. He's just a Master Mason. That's a 3rd degree Mason. You can go in the lodge. You can get that in 1 year. You could get that in 3 years. Some people get that immediately. And then I'll talk later on about the 33rd and all of that other stuff that came later on. There's appendant bodies. Now, appendant bodies are like I said, colleges. Now, in these colleges, these appendant bodies, we'll talk about Albert Pike, and I'll talk about the OTO and Alice Crowley, and all of these Thelema, and all of these organizations, and all of these occult teachings that came later on that was started by Freemasons. Occultists and Freemasonry is connected. Esoteric Freemasonry, Enochian magic, and the Royal Arch, and all of this other stuff. It's all connected through Freemasonry in higher degree work, above the 3rd degree. Once you get out of high school and you have a diploma, you can go to college, but you got to have a diploma. In order to be part of the York Rite, the Scottish Rite, or all of these things that we call appendant bodies, and I'm not a Masonic apologist, I'm just explaining the truth of what this thing is. So now don't start running like people were running before. Oh, Berea said don't lump them together. He's an Israelite. All this stuff just because you're telling the truth. They don't all believe the same thing. Period. So when we start dealing with high school, everybody to get into the Scottish Rite, to get into the York Rite, to get into any of these appendant bodies, these colleges, to teach further spiritual and moral truths, you gotta have a high school diploma. That means you gotta be a graduate. That means you gotta be a Master Mason. You gotta be in a Blue Lodge. The Blue Lodge is the bottom of everything. Now, because you got a 33rd degree, of course you walked all through the Scottish Rite and all the degree work in the York Rite, because you walked all through that, don't mean you're more of a Mason than somebody in the Blue Lodge. Once you're a Master Mason, you're a Master Mason. Now, there are people that go and get that extra degree work and they got further Masonic light. We're not going to talk about what the light is yet. They got further Masonic education, further Masonic knowledge. So in order to go to college, in order to get into the appendant bodies, in order to be down with the Scottish Rite, the York Rite, and all Shriners, and all this other stuff, you gotta first have a high school diploma. That means you have to be at least a 3rd degree in the Blue Lodge. You're part of the Blue Lodge. You can stay in the Blue Lodge, but now you can go and you can fellowship with other masters, other places that deal with further degrees and deeper knowledge. Remember that, because I'm going to take y'all to the story of Enoch, the Book of Enoch, and how Enoch is connected to the occult science. Don't be confused. One thing I don't need is a bunch of nonsense running around. Don't be confused for 1 minute. It was 2 doctrines in the Garden of Eden. Remember this for when I start showing y'all some stuff later on. It was two doctrines. There was a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And somewhere in that Bible, God said the man has become like one of us. Because they ate from that, because they started dealing with that other stuff. Now, when we deal with the compass and the square and the G that you see in the higher degree work, then we'll get into that other tree. I'm going to keep playing this video. Fair use.
Earthly meaning then is of the secret phallus. Its cosmic meaning is of the sun worshipped since antiquity by pagans while facing the east. Now, on April 15th, 1603, King James, he knelt at the Masonic altar in Scotland, which is the womb of Freemasonry, and he received the mark of the Masonic beast. And each degree in Freemasonry, the Mason pledges himself to a different Egyptian deity. The 32nd degrees give you access to becoming a Shriner. And as a Shriner, you will place your hand on the pagan Muslim Quran, so Islam is associated with it, and then you pledge yourself to the pagan god Allah, who, by the way, lies that Yahushua HaMashiach did not even die for us, and that the Yahuwah Elohim has no son.
All right. When you deal with Masonry, they do get into different religions, and we'll talk about, is Freemasonry compatible with biblical truths, universalism. That's how come I said I got to speak to the whole thing with Enoch and where Enoch got the knowledge from when we deal with the 7 liberal sciences and Pythagoras and why he's important in Freemasonry and higher degree work. Higher degree work. A lot of Master Masons, if you start talking about them, that's regular Blue Lodge people. That's the high school guys. If you start talking to them about esoteric Freemasonry and you start talking to them about the 47th problem of Euclid and Pythagoras and how Abraham was building with him and where these things come in, where these legends come in. A lot of these stories are mixed up. Farrakhan and them will give you some stories that's mixed up. That's how come I asked you yesterday, why would Farrakhan always talk about Moses and then place Nimrod after messing up the teachings of Moses and then present to us the Christmas tree and all these other lies, all this other nonsense? Are we gonna clear the nonsense up? Fair use. Let me keep playing this right here.
Son. Now that you have become familiarized with the Freemasons, their fringes, and also the King James Version of the Bible, let's take a look at a scripture that is very important to most people that consider themselves to be Israelites or that are a part of the Hebrew Israelite movement in the camps and other assemblies. That's Numbers chapter 13, verse 38. And it says, "Speak unto the children of Israel, and bid them that they make the fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put upon the fringe of the borders a ribbon of blue." Now, this is the only version, the King James that is, that says that they must have a ribbon of blue, and in the border there should be fringes. In all of the other different versions of the Bibles, this is how Numbers 15:38 reads. "Speak to the sons of Israel and tell them that they shall make for themselves tassels on the corners of their garments throughout the generations, and that they shall put on the tassels of each corner a cord of blue." Now, this is completely different than the King James Version, because the King James Version was basically saying that you have to wear fringes on a ribbon of blue. And this is what the Hebrew Israelites wear. As you can see in this photo, this IUIC member is wearing the scales of justice. Now, this is another Freemason symbol. Hey, I've been accused by the Hebrew Israelites of trying to get famous by talking about IUIC, which couldn't be further from the truth. I could care less about numbers. But I'm just trying to bring out the truth and the light to you, and so that you can make an informed decision as to whether you're going to follow these Hebrew Israelite camps or if you're going to just follow what the scriptures say that we are supposed to do as a true chosen people. Now, Luke 8:17 says that, "For there is nothing that is hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be made known or brought out into the open."
The authority vested in me, the Grand Prior of the United States of America, the Sovereign Military Order of the Temple of Jerusalem, be thou a knight. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Receive the spurs.
Which one of these came first? Were the Freemasons with their apron and their fringes and their swords and their ceremony and their rites and their tapping on the shoulders and their rituals, were they before 1969 in any Israelite camp? Forget the fact we put in IUIC. And if I pull up IUIC, Freemasonry and Israelites, IUIC, ironically, they speak against Freemasonry more than any other camp, it seems like. Full-blown teachings. Now, remember, IUIC is the same one that we showed that came from the New York City detective, Bishop Nathaniel. Bishop Nathaniel to get 501. Bishop Nathaniel got a 501c3, right? Because remember, our energy got to be strong all across the board. And a lot of people have been saying the Christian churches are in league with the devil, are in league with the white man, in league with the government if the church got a 501. All Christian churches got a 501c3. That's what the camps were teaching. But that's not true. Every church don't have a 501c3. And if a church do have a 501c3, it's interesting that they call themselves a church. In order to get the 501, Nathaniel had to call IUIC a church. You can't have a 501c3 and be known as a hate group. So you can't turn around and say, oh, the white man is the devil. So they switched the game up. They can't call these white folk devils. So what do? They got to do what they do in Freemasonry. Switch up and give them the code. Esau. So Esau is the white man devil that came from the same teachings from Clarence 13X. Of course, Wentworth and everybody else prior to that wasn't saying white folk when we deal with the Israelite movement. When we deal with the Israelite movement, who y'all want me to bring up? Garfield? Who y'all want me to bring up? Vocab? Who y'all want me to bring up? Best? What's the other guy name in the video? Who y'all want me to bring up? Who y'all want me to bring up? So before 1969, it wasn't a black-white thing. That's how come I ask people, we talk about leaky doctrine. Of course, the same teachings for Harlem, the same conscience doctrine from Harlem, the same Freemason influence from Harlem influenced the whole conscious community. Don't think Israelites ain't part of the conscious community. Don't think the conscious community, Sinetta and them ain't got a religion. Jabari and them ain't got a religion. Oh, don't think that for 1 minute. We got to make sure we're not confused with none of this. With none of this. Now, show and prove before 1969, Israelites were running around here talking about the white man was the devil. Esau was the wicked. We use scriptures for everything. And I'm going to show you how Freemasons and occultists and all of us use scripture and we jump in and out with interpretation, especially as Pentecostals, especially Israelites and Pentecostals, in and out with interpretation. Context means nothing. We ain't even heard Israelites talking about exegeting scripture until 3 years ago when we came on the scene, when I was an apologist back then, blowing at them. We ain't heard them talk about exegete. Find the Israelite teaching on the block out here talking about eisegeting scripture and hermeneutic and all of that. They want to come trade with that because they jump in and out. Like occultists jump in and out. Like crazy prosperity, manifest yourself Pentecostals jump in and out. I'm going to keep playing this. And this ain't every Israelite, just like it ain't every Freemason. We're just dealing with what's out here. Fair use.
You have to be careful what you ask for when you ask the Creator to reveal things to you. And the Creator has been revealing a lot of things to me about this entire awakening, about everything concerning it and surrounding it. And to be honest with you, a really bad taste has been put in my mouth. And I'm personally going to step away from this whole Hebrew Israelite awakening thing. Now, I'm not going to stop serving the Creator because I love him with all of my heart. So I will continue to serve him. But as far as this whole Israelite thing is concerned, I'm backing away from it because I have chosen, after being revealed, the Creator revealed to me just how demonic this entire awakening is. I've decided which God I'm going to serve or which higher power I'm going to serve. And it's the Creator of heaven and earth that I'm going to serve. And I'm going to back away completely from this whole Hebrew Israelite thing. But I'm still going to serve the Most High. Brothers and sisters, the choice is yours. Joshua 24:14. Choose whom you will serve. Now therefore fear the Creator and serve him in sincerity and in faithfulness. Put away the gods that your fathers served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Creator. I don't get paid.
All right, I'm going to share some of the other stuff. I think I'm going to share some of the other stuff, excuse me, later on. But I want to, now she's talking about the camps. We got to make sure we're separating camps from. I like when I'm dealing with doctrine, when I'm dealing with truth, when I'm dealing with history. I like that. I don't want nobody bunching me together with no Mormons. I ain't bear witness with no Mormons. I ain't thinking about no Mormons. I don't want people bunching me together. She's talking about one thing. She got involved. I guess she was apparently involved in that. I don't know if she was married to, dating one of them. Whatever it is, it is. But this was for the brother that hit me talking about Freemasonry in the church, because a lot of people don't know. Every pastor's not a Freemason, but every Freemason, when you're in, let me read this on the screen right here. You see what Joe said, right? He said, so how is there so many Christian leaders involved to take their pledge on the Quran? If I'm getting this right, no, when you're in the Blue Lodge, the Quran ain't really coming up in the Blue Lodge. That's when you become a Shriner. After you're a master, after you get out of high school, after you're a master, you could join an appendant body, the nobles of the mystic shrine. Them the guys that the cancer hospital, and the guys with the funny hats on. And I'll talk about the Nation of Islam with the crest, with the fez, with the sword above it, and all of that stuff. But you gotta be out of high school first. You gotta have a high school diploma. You gotta be a master mason to join the Scottish Rite, to join the York Rite, to join the ancient Arabic order of the noble mystic shrine. You have to for all of those things to go to college, you have to at least graduate. You have to at least be a master mason. So there's plenty of people that are master masons. They never heard the word Lucifer in the lodge, because that comes with appendant bodies. That comes with writings. When we deal with the writings and the degree work of not Aleister Crowley, of Albert Pike. Albert Pike reworked the Scottish Rite higher degrees, not for the master mason, not for them guys, not for high school, but for the college, the higher degree work. The higher degree work came later on. The higher degree work has a lot to do with Enoch and rituals, Enochian magic, Gnosticism. It has a lot to do with what we would call people would call occult lore, Wicca, witchcraft, Druidism, Cometicism. All of this is connected with higher degree work, but you get little hints of it. You get hints of it in high school, in the Blue Lodge, in the first 3 degrees. You just get hints of it. So there could be pastors, there could be people that go through all of that degree work. I mean, all of them 3 degrees in the Blue Lodge, and never get into the depths of Lucifer and what those other people came in, y'all know, Thunder came on in. He admitted he was Prince Hall. He admitted that he was in the lodge and he's a master mason. Now, and he said, I don't understand. He's a little bit confused with all the devil talk. And the internet has increased. Believe it or not, the internet has increased Masonic initiation, people coming back to the lodge, turning to a knowledge of the lodge. And why is that? Because people want to get locked in to the esoteric. People want to know it. And these are younger people, and this is the first time in a very, very long time that Masonry is seeing growth, because of the information that's on the internet, because of people like Alice Bailey, because of people like Helen Blavatsky that told people the secrets of the occult, the secrets of the religion, the secrets of the mystery schools have always been in Freemasonry. Now, you don't need to be in lodge to learn the occult right now, because like Blavatsky said, and she was one of the first ones, it's time for the teachings to be spilled out to the general public. So we're taught the occult doctrine from Disney, from television, from plays. When we start dealing with Mozart, we're taught the occult doctrine. We're taught rituals. Everybody's taught rituals. You don't have to be in a lodge at all to understand the occult these days, but that has been the primary school from back in the days. That's all we're saying. It's been the primary school from back in the days. And later on, higher degree work came. I had a discussion on Sinetta with what's the other guy named? They steeped in Freemasonry too. Malachi Z. York. What's his son name? I had a discussion with him, and we were going back and forth, and he on Sinetta like he's some master. And I'm like, yo, just when did the higher degree work come in? What year? Just explain it to me. He couldn't answer. So a lot of people are confused with this because of the information that's in the street. Another guy that took this degree work and just kerfuffled the whole thing with Egypt, and I call him the Black Albert Pike, was Malachi Z. York. Because he took the Quran, he took Sufism, he took the Moral Science Temple, he took Gnosticism, he took the Bible, he took Catholicism, and ran amok with it. And got out here and they said, oh, Malachi Z. York, he got hundreds of books. He got almost 1,000 books he dropped. I bet he did. He mixed everything up. He mixed everything up and he brought everything out here. Now, all right, that was that question right there. Now, the question is, what role does Enoch play when we deal with this story of Enoch? What role does Enoch play in Freemasonry? And when I'm saying Freemasonry now, I should say esoteric Freemasonry in the higher degree work, because everybody in the Blue Lodge don't know. A lot of people in the Blue Lodge I talk to, they ain't never heard none of this. And they look on the internet here and they hear some stuff. They just say it's all the devil. It's all the devil. And we'll talk about Freemasonry and is it compatible biblically? Because they believe in Enoch, and Enoch has heavily influenced them, and a legend that came down, because the legend heavily influenced them, a lot of people feel, well, y'all know the story about Enoch, right? And a matter of fact, I think I'm gonna play somebody else's video so y'all can hear it from these guys themselves, and how that thing worked. But I want to make sure that I'm not out here I don't want people to think that I'm out here just saying anything. So I want to make sure I pull everything up on the screen. Appendant bodies, when we start dealing with this. This is from the Grand Lodge of DC. Appendant bodies are them outside bodies. I already explained y'all that. This from the Grand Lodge, Washington, DC, about one of them, whatever it is, this they cite. This ain't Wikipedia, this ain't make-believe, this come from the Freemasons themselves. When we deal with appendant bodies, there are several bodies of Freemasonry by which Master Masons may become a member after he has been raised a Master Mason. You got to get out of high school. The high school is the Blue Lodge of Freemasonry. Most lodges you see are Blue Lodge. That's the most popular. Master Mason is the most popular degree. You're a full-blown Mason if you got a 33rd degree, if you're a Shrine, if you've been through New York, you've been through the Scottish Rite. They're all Freemasons. They're all at least Master Masons. You're official Mason once you become a Master Mason. Some of these bodies you may have already heard of, but they didn't know that they were comprised entirely of Masons, such as the Shrine or the Knights Templar. You gotta be a master. That's the only thing. You gotta graduate from high school to go to one of these colleges. Show yourself proficient, but you gotta have a high school diploma. The York Rite is an extension of the Blue Lodge, there through which all men initially joined the fraternity of Freemasonry. That's the Blue Lodge. That's what I call high school. There are fewer degrees in the York Rite than the Scottish Rite. These are two separate appendant bodies that's popular in America. A lot of Christians get down with the York Rite. They speak heavy on Enoch, but a lot of these rituals, Albert Pike gave more degrees. So Scottish Rite got a whole bunch they got 20 something. They got a whole bunch of degrees over there. And the York Rite only got 13. Well, 10. I guess you become the extra 3 or whatever. I'll explain that right there. They are characterized as the Royal Arch, the Cryptic Council, and the Knights Templar. Now, I'm going to bring up that word later on when we deal with Philip the Fair and we deal with banking and Freemasons and money and government. Knights Templar is a degree, but that was a secret order back in the days. We don't have, when the head of the Knights Templar got killed King Philip the Fair, the Beautiful, and the Pope and them, it was some money and a lot of stuff going on. Knights Templars were the first bankers. They came on the scene to protect Jerusalem and people that were traveling to Jerusalem. Some people got there, people would get robbed on the road. They didn't have state troopers and people to protect other people. So the Knights Templar said that they were going to protect the travelers. They were going to protect people. Remember, Jesus said in the Bible that a man fell among thieves. He was traveling from one spot to another and he fell among thieves because on the road you could hide behind rocks and you can get people walking and people traveling. If you go into Jerusalem and you coming from another town and you coming and you got a donkey or you're walking and your wife or a donkey, you got some gold coins, because you can't go to an ATM and pull money out. So we know you got some stuff on you. So this guy fell among some thieves. So the Knights Templar, they come on the scene and they want to protect travelers and protect different people. In order to do that, the Templars had different locations, so they would write and they would have signs and symbols. So you would want to go to Jerusalem, you would be in Europe somewhere, and you would want to go to Jerusalem. You'd go get them $50, you'll give them $100, and they'll write something down on a piece of paper with a code. When you get to Jerusalem, you'll run up on another Knights Templar at the bank, at the table, by the church, by the temple where you come to worship, and you'll show that paper with the signs and the codes, and he'll know I got to give him $58 in coins. So they had the banking locked down. Some stuff jumped off. They had a whole bunch of money. Catholics, they had war with the Catholics and the kings. It wasn't nothing but them. And they said the secret societies were dangerous because they're making moves. So they turned around and said, oh, well, they're kissing behind, this homosexual. All heretics were homosexuals. And there's certain charges that they would put on them in Europe. They end up rounding them up and getting them killed. And that was October 13th, on a Friday. This is how come people say Friday the 13th is no good. This is how come builders, in memory of them builders, a lot of people don't want a 13th floor. You'll hear all of these statements, and Friday the 13th is no good. It's because of what the church, it's because of what the government did to these poor righteous teachers. They end up being rich, but they were considered like poor righteous teachers. They want to defend the temple, and they just wanted to study some things about Solomon. Remember that as I go on. These bodies provide opportunity for additional contemplation of the lessons taught in craft masonry. What you learned in high school, what you learned in the Blue Lodge as a master mason, there's additional opportunities to contemplate on the lessons learned. Now, I can get into Albert Pike that wrote the higher degrees. Albert Pike turned around, and Albert Pike, he wrote a book called Morals and Dogmas. He turned around like Blavatsky, and he started lifting up Lucifer. Lucifer ain't no devil. Y'all confused. Y'all want to call Lucifer the devil, so you simple Christians say all Freemasons worship the devil. When some people in the higher degrees, they just believe in Lucifer as a being of light. Alice Bailey, Albert Pike, and Helena Blavatsky all said that Lucifer was God. Now, remember, we tell y'all that they teach an inverted hermeneutic, that the doctrine, the God and the tree that was the right tree in the Garden of Eden was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and that's the tree that resurrects mankind. The wicked God, yeah, he a God too, he a Elohim too, but there's a bunch of them. And he's one of them, but he's the one that broke away from the rest of the Elohims. Now, when nobody in the Blue Lodge know that nonsense. Nobody ain't ever heard that. But when you get up in the higher degrees, you get people that came in as occultists already. Manly P. Hall was already an occultist before he joined the lodge and went through that higher degree work. Albert Pike was already occultist before he joined the lodge. What's the other guy name? Who name the guys that started the OTO? They were all Freemasons. That started the OTO with Wicca and Magic and Crowley and them, and then we'll get into Jack Parsons. Then we'll get into later on. Next week we'll get into Jack Parsons, and we'll get into Scientology, and how Scientology is connected with the cult and it's connected with the Freemasons too. Higher degree work. Degree work is occult knowledge. Degree work is occult college. You just learn different things. So they give you a different way to read the Bible. This is why the God is talking about, the God in the Bible talking about, I'm a jealous God. This is why he's saying he a jealous God. He a jealous God because there's other gods and he don't want you to talk to the other gods. Some of them are called watchers. Enoch talked to them and they gave Enoch the 7 liberal arts. That's what Pythagoras and them come into Freemasonry, not in the lower degrees, not in the high school, not in the Blue Lodge. This is where that higher knowledge come in, that we got to begin to divide it. Now you can understand that there's multiple gods. It's one of them, and then later on, this is where the YouTube and all of them get the Anunnaki story from Zachariah Stitchin and all this other nonsense. I realize I'm a god. We're gods. We're from another planet, and the pseudo nonsense on the History Channel. It's all a cult tradition that's spilling out now. They're spilling out now. And they're building your knowledge through this stuff. All right, I'm gonna go on. Taught in craft masonry, but a brother who progresses through all the bodies in Freemasonry is no more Mason than one who is only a master Mason. So if you receive a 33rd degree, which is honorary, but you got to go through all the degrees. Some people would go through all of the degrees in the Scottish Rite, all of the degrees in the York Rite, like which I said, which are less degrees. You go through all of that stuff. You're no more. You may have more knowledge on the imagery and stuff in the craft, but you're no more a Mason, like somebody that just become a Christian. You just got saved today. You ain't no more saved than somebody been saved 30 years, 50 years. Mama ain't no more saved than you. She may know more things from walking with God and spending time with God than you, but as far as salvation, y'all are on the same level. If you became born again today and trusted in the finished work today and opened up your heart today, you're on the same level as grandma that's been saved 35 years. Let me go to the Scottish Rite. Scottish Rite is a more recent evolution, a development as additional lessons to those taught in the York Rite. Unlike the York Rite, Scottish Rite degrees are simply numbered 4 through 33. Remember, in the Blue Lodge, once you get out of high school, you're a 3rd degree, you're a Master Mason. If everybody is opened up to everybody that's a Master Mason, then you go from your 4th and you can work your way all the way up. The 33rd comes from them. That's a degree they put on, and some other people came and invented the Shriners, and we're talking about all of the bodies. 33rd being an honorary. Moreover, as in the York Rite, and all Masons understand the 32nd and the 33rd degree Mason is no more a Mason than any other Mason. Because you'll hear a lot of people, my grandfather was a 33rd, the 33rds are better. Like the 33rds are better than anybody else. They're all the same thing. The shrine. And let's just get into the different stuff right here and what the shrine is. The shrine, some may consider the public view of Masonry. It is founded upon the principles of the craft, but without the solemnity of the Blue Lodge. Among its many public charitable functions, the shrine is especially noted for its operations in many children's hospitals, burn units and all of that stuff. It goes on to speak about the Order of the Eastern Star, Job's Daughter, Rainbow Girls, the Moly, and all of that other stuff. This is just to show you that there are pendant bodies, there's other stuff. When people talk about it, you got to know what level they're discussing. So with knowing this, with hearing this, is it fair to say that every Freemason is a devil worshiper? Remember, a lot of them ain't never heard nothing about Lucifer. A lot of them ain't never been through the rites that Pike and them folk brought on the scene and those higher degrees. Just like somebody in college, they may not know some things that they are studying MIT. They ain't got on that level. College ain't for that. But once you graduate college, you can go to MIT. You could go to Harvard. You could go to Yale. You could go to community college. There's different levels. So we got to, that part right there, we got to first understand. Now, I'll get into what the Blue Lodge teach, and then we'll, like I said, when we deal with universalism and all of that stuff. But I want to explain a little bit about this Enoch. I want y'all, because the legend with Enoch is deep, and the legend, and the reason that I'm bringing this, where did you see devil worship or Satan or Lucifer? All right, I guess that's a side conversation. And this is why that's important, because people want to put devil worship in the Blue Lodge. Devil worship, Lucifer. And then you talk a lot of Masons, like, where are you getting this stuff from? So now we got the rise of the Masonic apologists. We have Masonic apologists now that's jumping on and arguing. That's how come I tell Christians, you got to be careful with taxal hoax and certain things that Christians, especially the Catholic Church, they wanted to war against the Freemasons because Freemasons have been involved in influencing governments. The Catholic Church, the kings of them ain't want nobody. They're like, y'all talking secret? Y'all know how to keep a secret? Y'all might be dangerous. Hitler wanted to kill, he shut down all the lodges and he wanted to kill them up, but they was looking for money, they were looking for occult knowledge, all of that stuff, but Hitler wanted them destroyed too. We'll get on to Freemason hating. Is it good? Is it bad? Was it worth it? Was it not worth it? Once we clear through some of the internet nonsense, some of the nonsense that the religious people have been putting out here, and then we can go a little further. All right, I want to explain Enoch. And then we got clandestine lodges. When we got the word clandestine, those are lodges that's not Prince Hall. There's a lot of people that teach Freemasonry out here, and they're not connected with the Grand Lodge. They're not connected with certain things. We may touch on that later on. But I want to explain the Book of Enoch and why that's important in magic, why that's important in spirituality, why we got it in the Church of Ethiopia, why Bruce brought it back, why Freemasons look at it, and how the legend came to get spun. Because a lot of this stuff is spinning a myth to teach people. They're going to spin something. Like them folk wanted to spin a doctrine to start giving you a white folk the devil and this and that, and how it was all connected to Elijah Muhammad, Clarence 13, next 5%, how it's all connected. And I think it'll make a little more sense when we do this. Fair use. I'm gonna play this other video right here. This ain't but a few minutes long right here. This guy's a scholar in religion. This is his field. This is what he do right here.
Access the vibrancy of a university campus wherever you happen to be. The Book of Enoch is the ultimate example of spin-off literature. It's over 100 chapters long, thousands and thousands of words, but it's based off of a fairly obscure biblical character, Enoch. The Hebrew Bible has very little to say about him. In the book of Genesis, he appears briefly in the genealogy of Adam. After fathering Methuselah and a bunch of other kids, the text simply says, Enoch walked with God, then he was no more, because God took him. Wait, there's got to be more backstory here, right? What does because God took him even mean? Well, early Jews and Christians were rarely satisfied with such vague biblical passages, which leads to its spin-off, the Book of Enoch. This text was so popular for early Christians that even the New Testament cites it. The book of Jude, the second to last book in the New Testament, directly references Enoch, chapter 1, verse 9. But for a book that was so popular for ancient Jews and Christians, very few people today know about it. So what is the Book of Enoch, and what does it really say? First of all, there's not just one Book of Enoch. In fact, the Book of Enoch typically refers to First Enoch. However, there's also a Second Enoch, which probably dates back to the 1st century CE, but is preserved in later manuscripts written in the Church Slavonic language. And there's a Third Enoch. It survives in Hebrew and was preserved by Rabbinic Judaism. This video will be focusing on First Enoch. The next consideration, calling it the Book of Enoch, is kind of a misnomer. First Enoch is a compilation of several texts stitched together. There are obvious and abrupt seams between sections that are best explained by the theory that someone brought them all together into a compilation sometime in the past. First Enoch has 5 major sections and 2 appendices, which you can see on screen. The oldest sections of the text probably date back to the 4th or 3rd century BCE. However, the most complete manuscripts of the text date to the 15th or 16th centuries, written in the Ethiopic language. Ethiopic, also known as Ge'ez, is a Semitic language, a cousin of Hebrew, Arabic, and Amharic, one of the main spoken languages in Ethiopia today. Ethiopic is the liturgical language of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, kind of like how Latin was historically used in liturgies for Catholics, or the Coptic language for Coptic Orthodox Christians. So you can see that the Book of Enoch had a long journey from when it was first composed to when our most complete manuscripts were created. Enoch was probably originally written in Aramaic before being translated into Greek and then finally into Ethiopic. Big chunks of the Aramaic version of Enoch were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls at the site of Qumran. One Dead Sea Scroll fragment contains several sections of Enoch in one text, which shows that the different sections were already circulating as one compilation by the 1st century BCE. In all, 90 different manuscripts of First Enoch exist in some form or another. However, some of the manuscripts have big differences compared to earlier versions. This is why if you're going to read it for yourself, it's really important to find a scholarly translation that tries to account for all of the manuscript variations. I personally recommend the Hermeneia translation by George Nicholsburg and James Vanderkam. It's published by Fortress Press. This is not a advertisement. It's literally just the best version I could find when I was researching this episode. Okay, that's a quick overview of the text itself. It's comprised of several texts stitched into one. It was originally written in Aramaic, but its most complete manuscripts are written in Ethiopic. Parts of it probably date to the 4th century BCE, but it also has sections that date to a few centuries later. But what about the content? What does First Enoch actually say? Like I said, the best way I can describe the Book of Enoch is that it is spin-off literature. It takes two tiny, tantalizing snippets from Genesis and expands them into a whole book of fantastic visions and stories. We already saw the first blurb, a few short sentences that says, God took Enoch. The second blurb, which inspires the entire opening section of First Enoch, is an odd story from Genesis 6, 1 through 4, about divine beings having sex with humans.
That's a whole nother thing. When we start dealing with watchers coming down and commentary on watchers and giants and where does doctrine come from. Religion for Breakfast is his YouTube channel. Henry, I think his name is Henry. Religion for Breakfast, though. We got to deal with, the Book of Enoch is troubling. It's troubling. Let me just put that word out there. It's troubling for a couple of reasons by some people, but we got to talk about it because you cannot tell nothing but all right, that's all right, no, that's all right. I think that's a side conversation, Thunder, right? I think that's side conversation right there. Yeah, we gotta I'm gonna play the rest of this, but we got to get deep into Enoch because a lot of the doctrines come from Enoch. And then I'm going to show you why the Knights Temple, why Noble Drew Ali and other people wanted to study Freemasonry when we deal with the dude's red pill and blue pill, when we deal with what's the other dude named that do the occult rituals, the young guy, not Panic, and Bobby Hemmett and everybody else, how they feel, let's just say the racist. Let's just say the racist side, or how this thing came about and the doctrines and why some people would argue it's good Masonry and it's bad Masonry. It's what Europeans took and done with Freemasonry to rule and use and manipulate. And we're going to deal with the symbols a little bit because, you'll see a lot of people talking about that pentagram. And, the Eastern Star is the pentagram and it's devil in worship. And then you'll see Crowley in them and the Church of Satan in them. If you look at the Satanic Bible, you'll see a pentagram on there. And Wiccans and different people will tell you, well, if it's facing up, if the two horns are up, it's the goat. And we'll talk about the goat and the goat bucking against heaven or the God of heaven. And if it's the one horn up, it's good. If it's flipped around, a pentagram could be flipped around where one pointing up and get flipped down where the two points are facing up. I'll pull up the Eastern Star and I'll show you that. But they'll say it depends on how you use it. It depends on which way you use these symbols, these rituals, and the magic. And I'm going to talk about how people want to call prayer, magic, and rituals. And we'll get into Ezekiel 8 because they're doing strange things towards the sun with their back in the temple. So we're gonna deal with a little bit of that. Let me play a little more Henry. It's important to lay out Enoch to understand the Royal Arch, to understand some of that higher degree work and that esoteric stuff and that side of the occult that we see all over the internet and how people connect everything with the occult with Freemasonry. We'll try to put all that together. I end up still.
Genesis says that before Noah's flood, divine beings called B'nai Elohim, which literally translates to children of God, come down to earth to have sex with human women, who then give birth to beings called Nephilim. The text says these Nephilim were the mighty men of old, warriors of renown. That's it. Nothing else. No more mention of who these Nephilim were or their exploits. No backstory about these sons of God. And you know what that means? It's a story ready for a spin-off. Enoch vastly expands these few verses into the Book of the Watchers. The sons of God are no longer a vague category of heavenly beings, but a whole society of fallen angels called the Watchers, led by their chief, Shemihaza. Their children, the Nephilim, are giants that start to wreak havoc on earth. Enoch 7:3 says that the giants began to kill men and to devour them, and then kill all the beasts and drank their blood. Sounds kind of like a horror film. This section also describes the Watchers as devious angels, skilled in evil supernatural arts, which they then taught to humanity. Chapter 8 says that the Watcher Asael taught weapons of war to humanity. Shemihaza taught them sorcery. Others taught humans how to do astrology. As the Watchers and Nephilim continue to devastate the earth and pollute humans with evil knowledge, The story culminates in humanity crying out to God for help. In response, God dispatches his 4 archangels to set things right. He instructs one to warn Noah about the coming flood, another to imprison the fallen angel Asael and cast him into darkness. God orders Gabriel to destroy the Nephilim with a downright chilling passage, telling Gabriel to go to the bastards, to the half-breeds, to the sons of miscegenation, and destroy the sons of the Watchers. Yikes. And finally, God commissions Michael to imprison the king of the Watchers, Shemihaza. In this story, God sends Enoch as a prophet or emissary to the Watchers to warn them that they'll be destroyed. The remaining sections of Enoch contain mostly prophecy and visions. Rather than summarizing each and every section, I want to focus on the major themes running through these prophecies. The expectation of a Messiah, final judgment, salvation, resurrection, and heavenly journeys. All of these are hallmarks of the cultural context and genre of First Enoch, Jewish apocalypticism. Apocalyptic literature is the name scholars call a bunch of texts that became super popular among Jews during the Second Temple period. These were texts that generally describe mystical visions of heaven, where an angel would reveal to a prophet the end times or a coming judgment of the world. Enoch is one of the oldest Jewish apocalyptic texts, even older than another famous apocalyptic text, the Book of Daniel. That's to say, if we follow the scholarly consensus that Daniel was composed during the Hellenistic era of the 2nd century BCE.
I often hear, both in the theological world and also, in the general church world,
many of the terms commonly associated with Daniel, like the Son of Man and the Messiah, can be found first in the Book of Enoch. In one chapter, Enoch sees a vision in which the Son of Man is commissioned. He will be the staff for the righteous. He will be the light of the nations, and all who dwell on the earth will fall down and worship before him. For those of you familiar with the New Testament, this sort of language should sound familiar, as it's all applied to Jesus as well. But in this text, Enoch himself is named the Son of Man. Chapter 71:14 says, "You are that Son of Man who was born for righteousness." We also find the idea of hell in Enoch, another theological concept seen later in Christianity. Remember from my History of Hell video that the concept of hell does not exist in the older texts of the Hebrew Bible. It is a later innovation that gained popularity during the Second Temple period, especially in apocalyptic literature. In chapter 21:7, Enoch beholds a narrow chasm extending to the abyss, where he saw a great fire burning and flaming. The text says, "This place is a prison for the angels. Here they will be confined forever." Okay, so that's a summary of the content. Basically an entire text super concerned that the current world is evil and needs to be judged and renewed. A new age is at hand. God's final judgment is coming. But what about its later history? First Enoch was enormously influential for later Jews, Christians, and even Muslims. First, let's go through its history within Judaism. First Enoch influenced a bunch of non-canonical Jewish texts. In fact, Jubilees, another Second Temple Jewish text preserved in Ethiopic and found at Qumran in Hebrew, shares a lot of details with Enoch. However, although the Book of Enoch was a big deal for Second Temple Judaism, it plays almost no role in modern Judaism. Rabbinic Judaism rejected 2 major claims put forth by the Enoch spin-off literature. First, they rejected the notion that Enoch never died, and the idea that rebellious angels came to earth at the time of the flood. Because of this, Enoch doesn't formally appear in the canonical books of the Hebrew Bible, and only rarely in rabbinic literature. And even when it does appear, it appears in a negative light. One of the most important exceptions to the negative portrayal of Enoch in rabbinic literature is Third Enoch. This is a rabbinic Hebrew story of Enoch transforming into the angel Metatron. Metatron, the transfigured Enoch, is even described as a second or lesser Yahweh. While Enoch is mentioned in Third Enoch and some other mystical rabbinic texts, Rabbinic Judaism doesn't consider them standard. For example, the Babylonian Talmud, second only to the Hebrew Bible in importance for traditional Rabbinic Judaism, says that a famous rabbi became a heretic when he saw Metatron sitting in the presence of God and claimed that there are 2 powers in heaven. In the Talmud, Metatron and the rabbi are both punished, but this story reflects the Talmud's discomfort with the whole idea of Enoch becoming a divine being. Curiously, this is not the case in Kabbalah, medieval Jewish mysticism. Kabbalistic texts such as the Zohar not only view Enoch positively, but also compares him to Adam and refers to the Book of Enoch to explain ambiguous biblical verses. The scholar of late antique Judaism and Christianity, Annette Reed, suggests that this is a result of continuing cross-cultural Jewish and Christian dialogue throughout late antiquity. Because apparently Christians really liked this text, at least at first. Like I said, the Book of Jude in the New Testament directly references 1st Enoch, and Enoch likely influenced the theology of the Gospels and the Book of Revelation. The idea of the Son of Man, for example, which appears in the Gospel of Mark, shares theological similarities with 1st Enoch. The last book of the New Testament, Revelation, closely resembles the apocalypse of the Book of the Parables, since both describe a throne room apocalypse partnered with a final judgment both in the heavens and on earth. Initially, 1st Enoch was a big deal for Christians. Church fathers such as Justin Martyr and Irenaeus use and reference 1st Enoch. Tertullian even defends the book's authority, and the non-canonical Epistle of Barnabas refers to 1st Enoch as scripture. However, by the 4th century, Enoch apparently fell out of favor. It's around this time that big-name church fathers like Augustine and Jerome rejected it. By the 7th and 8th centuries, 1st Enoch only remained popular in Ethiopia, which still remains true to this day, as part of the biblical canon of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. With over 81 books, the biblical canon is much wider in Ethiopian Christianity compared to other branches of Christianity. And by including Enoch, the book has left a lasting legacy on Ethiopian Christians. But Enoch was not only a big deal in Judaism and Christianity, he also appears in early Islamic traditions. The prophet Idris is mentioned twice in the Quran. The Quran commands its audience, and remember Idris in the book, verily he was truthful and a prophet. We raised him to a sublime station. Idris is typically associated with Enoch, although some also associate him with Elijah. And like what we see in the book of Genesis, his little blurb here is ambiguous. Many Muslim commentators debate what is meant by raised to a sublime station. In one hadith, one of the reported sayings, actions, and approval of the prophet reports that he met Idris in the 4th heaven during his miraculous ascension through the
remember that raised to the sublime station, when we talk about that sublime level of a master mason and that Apartheos with George Washington. What is the ultimate purpose in degree work? What's the ultimate purpose in degree work? Somebody asked on this thing, they said, but don't Freemasons use the Bible? Yes, Freemasons do use the Bible, absolutely so. And one of the things, hold on one second. Because I know that thing is going to start beeping. One of the things that we got to remember is, let's not make Masonry something that it's not. Freemasonry can't do nothing and didn't never claim to do nothing for drunks, for murderers, for drug dealers, for gangbangers. We got to take them at their word what they say. Freemasonry say we take good men and make them better. That's what they say. So they're not claiming to do what the Bible is saying, 2 Corinthians 5:17, if any man be in Christ, that he's a new creature, old things are passed away, and behold, all things have become new. They're not claiming to change a drunk, to change a murderer, to change a gangbanger. They don't say that they transform lives, and there's many of them that argue they're not a religion because of that, but they'll already take good men and make them even better men. So, of course, you're going to use the Bible. A lot of them, especially in the Blue Lodge, they're dealing with every bit of the Bible. They're dealing with every bit of the Bible. Now, we have to look at statements that people made. Matter of fact, I'm going to stop this right here. We got to look at statements that people made, like Albert Pike. That was an occultist before he got in Freemasonry and did some stuff over there in Scottish Rite. And y'all know for a long time, when we deal with Freemasonry, when it started off, with Prince Hall and them back in the days, a lot of stuff with slavery and everything was going on. And there were very few people that wanted to connect and respected Black people. Prince Hall fought for a charter and all of that. That's where we get the 459, the lodge out there in Boston and all of that other stuff. But we got to remember certain things that when we're dealing with them, we have to look at what they say. Albert Pike came on the scene later on, and I stress he was already an occultist. He came on the scene later on, and he said something that a lot of people never heard before. He said that you're giving those degrees in the Blue Lodge, and you're giving a meaning, and it's intended that you think you understand the meaning. But we are intentionally misleading you. Now, he didn't write he ain't formed nothing with the Blue Lodge. But he came on as an occultist later on and say, y'all think it means this down there, but now y'all done got out of high school and you in college studying higher degree work over here. This don't mean what you learned in high school. This means something else. And he is one of the first ones to say that. So when we put charges of Luciferianism on Freemasonry, we got to understand, one, who the charges are coming from. Like I said, and I'll talk about the Taxel hoax and all of that. We got to understand where the charges coming from, who the charges came, and just understand how the whole thing been developed. Now, why did I go through playing this guy? And it's good to subscribe to him. I recommend him for your religious knowledge. I didn't say spirituality, religious knowledge. He is a scholar in the field, and he's good at that. I don't look at certain people for spirituality, but just for the religious knowledge, the information that I can apply, that can help me get clarity on the background of the book. When we deal with the Book of Enoch, there's tradition. There's only a few passages that talk about Enoch. Let's just make that clear. He already said that. Enoch is spoken about in Jude. And Enoch is spoken about a little bit in Genesis. Now, legend and other things teach that Enoch went to heaven, not the Bible. Remember, I told you these people weave in and out of the Bible to teach. A doctrine is nothing but a teaching. They weave in and out of the Bible. As the legend goes, Enoch went to heaven. And then when Enoch got to heaven, he spoke to some angels. He spoke to some beings that's spoken about in the book of Daniel. He's spoken about some watchers. And you had good angels and you had bad angels. But what Enoch did was travel into the spirit realm, and he spoke to these angels. And some angels said, go back to God and tell him we played ourselves. Give us another chance. So some argue that Enoch, the angels asked Enoch, the ones that messed up, that got kicked out, that ended up playing themselves, they asked him to go back and try to talk to God on their behalf. And then I'll talk about universalism later on. I'll talk about how that connects with the whole thing with Enoch and why some people feel all roads lead to religion, because that's one of the charges we have, is that Freemasonry will accept anybody, or the Buddhist brother right here, the rabbi that believe only in the Old Testament, as long as you believe in deity. There's charges of universalism that's always been in Freemasonry, but these are things that have always been with certain individuals in the church. That's why we got beef with Carlton Pearson and them. Did any church father teach universalism? Did any church father, I'm asking Bible question right now, where the Bible people at? Name a church father that might have taught universalism, that in the end all men shall be saved. Jeffrey Dahmer gonna be in heaven. John Gotti gonna be in heaven. Shoot, Satan gonna get another chance. The fallen angels gonna get another chance. God is gonna make all things right, and everything is gonna be back to normal. Ain't gonna be no fallen angels, ain't gonna be no sinners. God gonna give everybody a fair chance. And then I'll talk about when other people believe in the immortality of the soul. That's one of the things you got to do. So Enoch went to heaven, and Enoch was supposed to be asking for another chance for the angels. The angels turned around and they started teaching Enoch some stuff. They gave him the 7 liberal sciences. They gave him mathematics and geometry and all of that stuff. They gave him different teachings, and he wrote all of these teachings down. Now, my man mentioned that Genesis 6 book. That's Gary Wayne. What's the guy name that wrote Genesis 6? Put his name down there so I can put it up on the screen. So now the thing is that Enoch, he learned the sciences from the angels. and they were supposed to be occult sciences or whatever. And Enoch took them, and Enoch wrote them down on stone, and Enoch hid them from God because Enoch knew the flood was coming. So now this ain't Bible now. This ain't Bible, but this is lore. This is occult lore and tradition. And he wrote the sciences down. And these sciences were taught, what's the name? There was a Freemason. He taught that the sciences were taught to the Greeks, the first Europeans, from the Egyptians. We'll talk about where the Freemasonry even really come from. That's a whole nother, that ain't even done to deal with because nobody knows. And he took the stuff down and he wrote all the stuff down. He wrote all the sciences down, but he had to write them in stone because he knew a flood was coming. And he wanted mankind to get the knowledge because this knowledge is what's going to resurrect the human race. This knowledge is what's going to civilize, teach us how to build, teach us how to read, how to write, how to plant, how to deal with the medicine, how to understand the stars, how to communicate with the spirits. And he wrote it down, and the flood came, and after the flood, they turned around and they found it. When we started talking about lost stuff and recovered stuff, and they lost it. And then later on, it came up on the scene. Gary Wayne is the name of Gary Wayne is the name of the guy. Let me, so I'm giving y'all a little bit of this. How long I've been on here? All right, an hour. Dang, all this talking, I only been on here an hour and a half. All right, let me play some of this. Let me play some of this guy right here. He's a lawyer. He studied history. He's been to Oxford for a minute. He been through all that degree work. He's a Freemason. He's presently a Freemason, and he deals with the mystical side, the esoteric side, and the higher degree work of Freemasonry. Listen to some of what he has to say. He got a book called The Royal Arch, and talking about Enoch and all of that. It's different. Let's just put it. I think I'll pull it up on my Kindle and show you a couple of things I got highlighted. It's just different. I'm just going to put that out there. Remember, weaving in and out of the Bible. And a lot of people need to know how to understand this because when they hear people in the barbershop on the block talking occult stuff, but then talking the Bible stuff too, and then you're like, wait a minute, where are you getting these stories from? And these stories are very, very popular. All right. Here we go. Fair use.
In the background there. Tell us something about the Masons in our midst now. What's the overview of the structure of Freemasonry? How is it organized administratively around us or in the country, or however you want to frame that?
Right. So the way it works is it's a broad question. I'll try to narrow it. Essentially, the way a person would want to become it starts small, and I would say it gets larger. The way a person would, if they wanted to become a Mason, would be to join what is called the local Blue Lodge. This is the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry. This is the degrees of Entered Apprentice, Fellow Craft, and Master Mason. Once you have completed those 3 degrees, then you can hold yourself out as a Freemason. At that point in time, you can go into. There are numerous high-degree bodies of Freemason you can go into. The 2 premier ones in the United States are what are called the York Rite and the Scottish Rite. Those are completely voluntary. You do not have to go into them. You can if you want to, but no one will twist your arm for one or the other. Administratively, the way the Blue Lodge is organized, it's run by the guy who runs it for the year. It's run annually. It changes. It's called the Worshipful Master, and he's assisted in running the lodge by 2 wardens. Then you have that's the local Blue Lodge level. That's how you become a Freemason. The Blue Lodges, the local lodges, like you mentioned during the intro, Amicable St. John's Lodge, which is the one I'm in, these fall under the aegis of the Grand Lodge of Maryland. I'm in Baltimore, so the lodges in Maryland all fall under the State Grand Lodge of Maryland. What is particular is each state Grand Lodge governs itself. There is no unifying national Grand Lodge in the United States. Each Grand Lodge is its own separate entity. So, for example, I'd be under the State Grand Lodge of Maryland. The Grand Lodge of Maryland couldn't bark orders or dictate to the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, let's say. So that's really the way administratively the lodge system in the United States is structured, with the local Blue Lodges answerable to the state Grand Lodges, who are independent of each other's state Grand Lodges. Then you have the high degree bodies. Like I said, and there's other ones, but the two biggies are the Scottish Rite and the York Rite. And they are recognized by the state Grand Lodges as legitimate affiliates of Masonry. There are Masonic-like organizations out there that are legal, and I don't have a problem with them, but they are not Freemasonic per se. They do not attach themselves at any state or local or high degree Grand Lodge system. They are Masonic-like, but they are not part of Freemasonry proper.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. You guys, I know I had to get conspiratorial with my.
I want to stop right there for a minute. There's a lot of guys that's teaching Cometicism out here and claim that, well, that they are doing, like I say, and doing degree work. They're teaching a form of Kemet, and they're calling themselves lodges. We got Europeans, we got people calling themselves Rosicrucian Lodge, this and that, and they all claim to be teaching Freemasonry, but it's not what people would call recognized Freemasonry. Black recognized Freemasonry is called Prince Hall. You have people that's not operating, like he said, under Grand Lodges. So it's just people, I got Masonic Lodge. I'm finna open up the Berean Lodge #1. And I'm just going to get out here and start talking because I got heavy knowledge on the subject. And I start getting out here talking and giving out degrees and all of this stuff. But that's considered unorthodox, heretical, outside, not or clandestine is the word. You'll hear terms like that, and you got people that'll be saying stuff like that. They'll be moving in a certain way, but they're not connected with Prince Hall from back in the days. They're not connected with mainline Freemasonry. That's a whole nother thing. If you're teaching Cometicism and you're mixing about and you're doing a Malachi, if you're doing a Malachi Z. York thing. Malachi Z. York was teaching a form of Freemasonry. Let me pull him up and show him down there in Atlanta with all the Masonic God, and he connecting that, but that ain't got nothing to do with Prince Hall Freemasonry. He teaching whole occult. He somewhere else with a whole new doctrine. But he's calling it Freemasonry, and he's saying this is the true Freemasonry, but nobody that's really Prince Hall is recognizing him, and he ain't running up in no Prince Hall. He's not mingling with them. Nobody, no real main church or what we would call like the Black Church, the Prince Hall denomination is not dealing with him just at all, but a lot of people are reading his books. Even some Freemasons are reading his books. A lot of 5%ers reading his books. Even people in the Moore Science Temple reading Malachi Z. York books. Fair use.
Little pyramid with the eye. You'll see me change it throughout the show. So quick question. I think this is something any average person, even as such as myself, I am no expert in understanding any of this. So I'm taking notes. How does an individual progress within the organization, at least your organization, yourself being a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Freemason, really kind of, how do they progress, and like, what is the purpose of it? Is it really holding secrets?
Right. No, I understand the question. It's a great question. And it's one of those questions where it almost depends on who you talk to. I am in the camp that the rituals do contain esoteric secrets. That is the camp I am in. There are other Masons out there who will tell you these are just harmless allegories that have no deeper meaning, and that people like myself are seeing things that aren't there. My research has led me to believe the otherwise. I believe these rituals and these symbols are containing these lost esoteric, what you would want to call mystery school symbols. Freemasonry incorporates so many elements into it. It's one of the reasons I was attracted to it and like writing about it and like talking about it. When you're dealing with Freemasonry, even in the Blue Lodge and the high degrees, you're dealing with elements of Christianity, Islam, Judaism, the occult, Kabbalah, mysticism, the mystery schools, Gnosticism, alchemy. This all gets blended into this stuff, comparative religion. This all gets mixed into Masonic symbolism and the rituals. The way it works is, it's not, any state secret. If you want to become a Mason, you have to petition a Masonic lodge to.
All right, he's giving a walk through how to get into the lodge. Now, you heard what he said, because Freemasons Don't judge each other's doctrine, what another man judge. I can't judge what you believe. And if you're going to heaven or hell, I'm not going to argue religion with you. Because of that, there's different interpretations. He come on as a Freemason that writes, that deals with history, that deals with the esoteric, that deals with higher degrees. He said there's some people in the lodge that'll say it's all hogwash. I'm using my words, hogwash, far as seeing the occult, seeing schools of magic, seeing esoteric explanation, or alternative explanations. This is all allegory. It's just a story to make you better. There's not a magic ritual or an occult doctrine that's being taught. It's not dual doctrines coming down. It's a lot of people that believe dual doctrines are in the Bible. Dual doctrines are coming down, and this is one of the reasons that you remember yesterday I said y'all got to remember that to remind me to tell y'all about a higher and a lower worship, a higher and a lower knowledge, and we I think with some I'm gonna speed it up. Some of what he's discussing, I'm gonna play at least 20 minutes of this. Some of what he's discussing is going to take us into that duality of how you understand it. It's the same pentagram. It's the same gun. You protecting your family or you murdering people, robbing the bodega. This is nothing but spiritual knowledge. Some people took it to manipulate it and they called it witchcraft. You call it bad magic, and some people do good with the spiritual development to develop themselves. A good person developing themselves. And then we'll get into the doctrine. Is it a works religion? Some people want to argue it ain't a religion, but they got a temple. They open and close in prayer. They got a holy book. Let's not be confused. It might be what we call generic religion, but it is a religion in one form.
Join. Usually you have to know someone in the lodge to join, although there is a way around that if you do not know anybody and you want to join a Masonic lodge. There is a way around that. The way I joined was I knew I had a mutual friend of my mother and father's who was a Freemason, and in the summer of 1990. So at any rate, but then what they'll do is they'll get other people, they'll initiate other people, and they'll get a class of like 4 entered apprentices.
This
together.
is just to him talking about him.
The catechism is divided amongst the 4 candidates among millennials and interest in Freemasonry in the esoteric, in the mystical side of it.
You're going to have to get used to asking questions that might make you a little bit uncomfortable.
This is something that I knew was there, but I really didn't discover it until after I joined it. It wasn't until after I joined it that I, was exposed to the works. I knew a little bit about Albert Pike and read some of his, but then you get into like Albert Mackey and then especially like Manly P. Hall. That's when I really started, to piece this all together and figure it out. And I am, like I said earlier, and in the camp that this does contain, these rituals and symbols are mystical in nature. Just to end, with millennials, there is definitely, and the advent of the internet, a element of interest in the occult and esoteric. This has been decidedly absent prior to the advent of the internet. Masonry, and there's a reason for that, is Masonry in the 1820s suffered a massive blow, something known as the William Morgan affair, and it almost put Freemasonry out of business in the United States. It survived, but one of the consequences of the William Morgan affair was Masonry had to distance itself from the occult, the esoteric side of things, and essentially reemerged as just a fraternal organization that helps widows and orphans. This was the philosophy that carried Masonry through the 19th century, through most of the 20th century, through the 80s, 70s, 80s, up until really the internet, where then people were being exposed on a much more easier basis to these Masonic mystical writers. And, there's definitely been a renewed interest in Freemasonry because of the esoteric side of things. I totally agree with that and would not refute that.
When he's talking about Masonry back in the days upstate here, but Batavia, New York, a guy, William Morgan, he wanted to expose, he was in Freemasonry, then he wanted to expose Freemasonry, and some guys end up getting him and killing him. And they said it was, ritual style, just like laid out if you reveal any of the secrets in the ritual. and they killed him the same way the ritual tells you to kill him. And people turn around and found out some guys tried to escape. Matter of fact, they did kind of get away, but they got caught. But with the help of with some of their brothers, they got away. But that in the early America, that started what we call a anti-Masonic party. A lot of people said, "Oh, these people are devil worshipers on the low." That was the main thing with Freemasonry back then. That these people, listen, these are satanic rituals, and they turned around and they killed this guy and they cut his throat and they did just what the instructions told them to do. They all murderers, and we can't trust them. So that started a whole Masonic movement. We had the Democrats and we had Republicans. We had an anti-Masonic party, and that almost killed Freemasonry. The two things that almost that was a bad blows to Freemasonry was that, and in Europe there was a guy that was down with banking, and he was involved in something that was known as the P2 Lodge. Now mobsters would go in there, cardinals from the church will go in there, and seemed like some of that money was connected to the Vatican. And he was a banker, and they found him dead up underneath a bridge. Y'all go pull up that P2 Lodge in Italy. But could come to find out, they said, well, mobsters infiltrated, the Vatican. Well, there was some priest that was riding with Freemasonry. Normally they don't. There was some priest that were riding with Freemasonry and money. It's kind of like the movie The Godfather, how this mob money is down with the church and all of this crazy stuff. And they found him dead underneath a bridge. They said mobsters got into the lodge, whatever it is. A lot of Masons wanted to distance themselves from that P2 Lodge, and they said the lodge, them dudes just went crazy in there. It was just a money thing. It was uppity. It was businessmen. It was mobsters. Everybody there had money. Everybody was getting money. Killers, hitmen, all type of crazy stuff. But they saying we can't judge Freemasonry on that. So those are the two main things. The William Morgan affair from back in the days and the P2 Lodge was the two main blows in the last, let's say, 100 years dealing with craft masonry.
Wow. So if you don't mind, Rob, we're going to jump over here to your book for a second, because your book traces the origins of a higher ritual in Freemasonry named Enoch. Okay, yes. Who is Enoch, and what's his importance to Freemasonry? I want to say this because I know you want to jump right in that. Me and Luther have seen strange numbers, patterns, symbols, even in a lot of the literature. But anyway, this is your run with this, because I'm really interested in learning more about this.
Right. This is the thesis of my main book, and it's I'll do my best to condense the answer, but it's a very lengthy one.
Now, we're going to let him play that answer, and you're going to listen to him. Someone want to know why you would bring this up, because the brother that was deceived and thinking he was involved in the camp and Masonry didn't have anything to do with the camps. Masonry steeped in the Abrahamic faiths, and steeped within certain elements of Masonry is what we would call the occult doctrine. Occult doesn't necessarily mean devil worship. People, we the church, we've connected with devil worship. Occult just means hidden or secret, or only a few going to understand and only a few going to really get the meaning of this here. That's what occult means in the term in which we use it, in which we're using it here on this channel. We're explaining some things. But when you use the word occult, we got two words, O-C-C-U-L-T. That means hidden. That means secret. When you see the word C-U-L-T, that's different. A cult is like a breakaway of religion. The Nation of Islam call itself Islamic, but it's a Islamic cult. Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, coming from W.D. Fard, believing Fard is Allah come in the flesh. Muslims don't like that. God ain't coming down here to be no man and all of this other crazy stuff. Muslims, real Muslims, the 2 billion people as Muslims on this planet, they don't go for that. So the Nation of Islam is a cult. Jehovah's Witnesses is a cult. They say it's Christian, but it's a breakaway, and it teaches another doctrine. They don't believe in the physical resurrection. They believe Gabriel is Jesus in the spirit. Then he came down, he became Jesus. They believe stuff that mainstream Christianity don't teach. So Christianity calls them a cult. They're outside of the scope of Christianity, but they call themselves Christians. The Mormon Church, Seventh-day Adventists. Why we call Seventh-day Adventists a cult? Because you got to keep the Sabbath. And then they start pushing dietary laws, and that's outside of what mainstream Christianity teaches, that you will go to heaven. Mainstream Christianity teaches that don't let no man judge you by day. If you don't go to church Saturday, if you don't go to church Sunday, if you only go to church Wednesday nights, you can make it in heaven. It's not by works of righteousness which you have done. And so they're considered a cult because of that. They're outside of the scope of Christianity. The Mormon Church, the same thing. They wear Masonic underwear. They have Masonic ceremony. They say you're going to get your own planet. They say Jesus and Lucifer are brothers. They call themselves Christians, but they are outside of the scope. So they are a C-U-L-T. They are a cult. Now, when we deal with the occult, O-C-C-U-L-T, that's secret meaning. That's secret teachings. That's esoteric, or that's just hidden, not known to the whole public. So you got the word occult and you got the word cult. There is a difference. Because of the internet and because of Manly P. Hall, because of Albert Pike, because of Helen Blavatsky, because of Annie Besant, and all of them being connected with Freemasonry, Aleister Crowley, what's the guy with Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard, because all of them were connected with the OTO or some appendant bodies of Freemasonry, and they taught a form of Luciferianism, or what we would call the occult. People label it all as devil worship. So anything that got a hidden or esoteric meaning is devil worship. I'm not telling y'all that. This is how people think and look at it. It may be good for people that come to this channel that's trying to learn more, trying to go to another level, to make sure that you don't call everything that's hidden the occult. I think that might be good. With the lumping, thank you, sister, with the lumping. So we can make sure, because something got a deeper meaning, like we say, oh, y'all running around here talking about baptism, and y'all running around here talking about the Eucharist, and no, wait a minute, y'all doing too much. Y'all doing too much right now. And there's a lot of people that'll make something that it's not. So to be careful, just to know, just to be separate, just to keep things separate. And I think that's where some of the confusion comes in. Everything the devil. Everything is the devil. Jesus spoke in parables. Why did he speak in parables? Because it's for you to know. Y'all that are given the keys to the kingdom. It ain't for them. That ain't devil worship. I'm talking a certain way so y'all can understand that ain't devil worship. So we just got to make sure that I just want to make sure that we're clear with that. But it's important that we get into Enoch and what he is saying about Enoch and the esoteric, because this has to do with the Nation of Islam, the Moor Science Temple, a lot of the barbershop talk, what's going on in our community, the Mormon Church, Jehovah's Witness, a lot of everything, dealing with religion, dealing with spirituality, dealing with Blavatsky, dealing with Cometicism. All of this stuff is connected to Enoch and rituals and myths. And then, like I said, I'll bring up some of that red pill, blue pill, Bobby Hemmett, and all that other stuff, because a lot of them teach that this stuff was good. This stuff was pure. We taught it to the Europeans, and the Europeans took it and ran amok with it.
Enoch is a person in the Bible. He is one of two biblical figures never to experience physical death. It's him and the prophet Elijah. He is essentially transported into heaven and is exposed to what could be best described as esoteric wisdom through a bunch of angels and fallen angels known as the Watchers. They have fallen into ill repute with the Supreme Being because they have come down to earth and mated with human women, producing this race called the Nephilim. They are, and the story with them, with the giants and all that. I'm not going to get into that. The legend of Enoch, as it is in the Book of Enoch, and the Book of Enoch is left out of the Bible. It's very controversial. Is he interacts with these fallen angels, this group called the Watchers, and he learns information from them. They have taught humans how to read, write, arithmetic. Enoch comes back to Earth and catches wind that the flood of Noah is coming, and because of that, he decides to trick the Supreme Being, and he takes this wisdom that he learns and buries it in a subterranean vault under 9 arches. He inscribes the mathematical wisdom on one pillar, and he describes the 7 liberal arts and sciences on another pillar. And in between the 2 pillars, he places the name of God, which is called the Tetragrammaton, on a golden delta. And he buries it in the ground. The whole purpose of this is to trick the Supreme Being, trick God, who is trying to eradicate mankind and eradicate this knowledge, this forbidden wisdom. Of course, the flood of Noah comes and the treasure vault survives it. In Masonic lore, and this is the entire heart and soul of Freemasonry, is the recovery of this subterranean treasure vault. How does this tie into Freemasonry? I'm going to explain it. In the Masonic ritual in the Blue Lodge, there is a character who turns up in the third degree who is building King Solomon's temple. His name is Hiram Abiff. He is finishing the first temple of God. He possesses this name of God, this tetragrammaton. He has it. It is through the pronunciation of this word that all wisdom is made possible. As the temple is nearing completion, 3 fellow crafts want the name of God. They want this word, and they accost him. He's trying to leave the unfinished temple, and they accost him. And they say, give us the name. Well, they accost him one at a time. They say, give us the name, and he won't do it. He says, I'll tell you when the temple's done. I'll give you the name. They said, that's not good enough, and they murder him. They murder Hiram Abiff, and he's dead, and the word dies with him. It's what's called the lost word of a master mason. The candidate is playing Hiram Abiff, and he's killed. He's ultimately resurrected. Think a Christ-like figure. And when the candidate is resurrected, he has a substitute name of God whispered in his ear. It's not the real name of God. That's the end of the Blue Lodge ritual.
That's how the Blue Lodge ritual ends. Yeah, now y'all remember that I told y'all W.D. Fard and Farrakhan took that ritual and came and said the Hiram Abiff, the one that died and need to be raised up, that's the blacks in North America. This is why W.D. Fard came to teach and to raise black folk up over here in North America, because we are those, that one that was killed, that great teacher, that holy man, that master builder. They took Masonic legend, Farrakhan, W.D. Fard, Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, and they started teaching black folk something different and said that you all are those people that comes from the Hiram Abiff legend. That is not Bible. That lunchtime came and the 3 Jews went and they killed Hiram Abiff for the word and all of that. Remember, tradition, Masonic, occultic lore, weaving in and out of the Bible. When we start dealing with the story of Enoch, and Enoch got the occult science of geometry and all of this other stuff, and we'll talk about sacred geometry, and he knew the flood was coming and hid it from God. Where that in the Bible? That's lore, weaving in and out of the Bible. In and out of the Bible, because you got to teach them a little. Did God really say? And then he'll add some other stuff. He know that the day that you eat from he'll add some other stuff, weaving in and out of what God's word, what God said, what God's instructions were, weaving in and out. Fair use.
The Blue Lodge Masons are forever running around looking for this lost word of a master mason. You move into the high degree rituals in the Scottish Rite and the York Rite, and you move forward in time to the Jewish people being exiled in Babylon under a Persian monarch named Cyrus the Great. And Cyrus decides to restore the temple in Jerusalem. So he dispatches a Jewish governor named Zorobabel, whose name literally means the heart of Babylon, back to the Holy Land to build the second temple. This is the temple that Jesus raises in the New Testament. This is the temple that Herod's temple. The second temple becomes Herod's temple. They go back to build the second temple, and the remnants of Solomon's temple are still there on the Temple Mount. As they are clearing the rubble away, they discover a trap door in the ground. It's sprung, and behold, here is the vault of Enoch that has survived the deluge of Noah. They go down, and there's the tetragrammaton, there's the lost wisdom.
Now, I got to stop right there. I got to stop right there for a minute. Excuse me. I got to ask y'all. Now, y'all do know that Enoch, almost every scholar, I can bring a Mike Hyers and all of them stuff. Let me write down that higher and lower, because I didn't even get into that yet. The higher and lower. Remember that. But you hear the story? He's telling you during Second Temple period, that's when Ezra and them came, and Zerubbabel and all of them, they kept Nehemiah and them, they came out of Babylonian captivity. Some Israelites stayed, some went back to rebuild the temple. That's the beginning of what we would call the Second Temple period. Second Temple period is when Enoch was written. That's when they started bringing this Enoch tradition together. Almost everybody that's a scholar in the field will tell you they seriously don't believe Enoch was around with David. The Enoch was around. Those words in that book that we call the Book of Enoch wasn't around back in the days with Noah. Enoch wasn't on Noah's Ark. We don't got no evidence that David and them 1,000, that David and them had Enoch in 1,000 BCE. Enoch seems to be a Second Temple period work. That's 200 all the way down to the 1st century. All of that is Second Temple period. And that seems to be the earliest of some apocalyptic works. So it's interesting that Enoch would pop up on the scene, and it's interesting that the legend and myth saying that this story of Enoch, that wisdom was found when they came to rebuild the temple, the Second Temple, from leftover stuff that was buried in the foundation of the First Temple in Jerusalem. Y'all going to need to remember this for other stuff that we're going to be dealing with.
This is the 13th degree in the Scottish Rite. It's called the Royal Arch of Enoch. It's named after the biblical patriarch. It's the 7th degree in the York Rite. And the reason this is important is the candidate, by discovering this lost name of God, becomes godlike. It's a form of Kabbalistic ascensio or apotheosis. He becomes this godlike being, and in the Masonic ritual, that gives him express warrant to rule over other people.
This is, my man said, the apotheosis. We're gonna talk about that with George Washington in D.C. and how you're ultimately deified. If you get a good man, some people say if you get a good man and you teach a good man some stuff, are we evolving into gods? The teaching on the internet right now is we're evolving into gods. We're gods and we got to wake up that divine spark, that form of Gnosticism, and Kabbalah's in there too. We'll talk about the whole Hasidic movement and, Kabbalah, because all of this stuff has to do with divine spark, waking up the God in you. You're God and you don't know it. 5% lessons. All these teachings are connected. All these teachings come from the same tree. All these teachings come from the same source. Do you turn into a god like Mormon? Do you turn into a god? Do you become a god when you die? Do you become a god when you die? Are you gods down here living an earthly experience and you got to realize the God inside of you, that you're divine? All this stuff sound familiar? We got different forms of it. The New Age been teaching it. A lot of folk been teaching it the world over, but in the hood, we took it another way. We said the white man was God and the black man was God and the white man was the devil. But everybody been teaching a form of ye are gods. Ain't that the doctrine that was back then? He know that the day you eat from that tree, that knowledge was back there, the doctrine was back there, and the doctrine's being taught right now.
If you know your U.S. history, all the political leaders in this country were part of this high degree system. The guy who ran it was a guy named DeWitt Clinton, who was a former governor of New York State and mayor of New York City.
Remember that.
Had to have gone through this Royal Arch ritual and received this name of God. This was your express de facto warrant to rule in the United States in the early days, back in the day. This is how Masonry literally crafted the country. The ritual is important because it documents the recovery of this lost name of God. There's two things I should point out is, in the Masonic lore, before the Masons discover the treasure vault, the vault has been breached by 2 other people before the Masons get there. They're legendary.
Wait a minute. Type of one if this thing is sounding all right. Y'all can hear this thing is sounding all right?
Figures. The first one is a character who comes out of Hellenistic Egypt, known as Hermes Trismegistus. He is essentially the de facto god of magic. He goes down into the treasure vault. He sees the name of God. He pronounces it correctly and restores the 7 liberal arts and sciences back to mankind. If you've got the symbolic eye, you will see Hermes everywhere around the library. This is why. The other character who goes into the treasure vault is Pythagoras, the Greek mathematician, who has his eureka moment, right? I have found it. In the vault of Enoch, I have found it, the name of God, pronounces it correctly and restores mankind restores mathematics back to mankind. The reason this is so important, and this is the entire thesis of my first book, is this Masonic ritual, what I've been talking about, is incorporating elements and components of the lost Book of Enoch, which was lost to history, to Western civilization from around the 2nd, 3rd century to around 1792, I believe it was, when James Bruce, Scottish traveler, returned from Ethiopia with 3 copies of it. Those copies weren't even translated into English until 1821. The Masonic ritual that is crafted around this Book of Enoch was developed. It was part of the high degrees. It was originally called the Rite of Perfection. It comes out of Paris, France in the 1740s, 1750s. And there was someone out there who had knowledge of this Book of Enoch to incorporate it in to this Masonic ritual. This is the entire thesis of my first book. And why this ritual is so critical is because it's the recovery of this lost word of Hiram Abiff. When you understand it and you understand the importance within Freemasonry, it is where all the symbolism that is crafting the government, that is crafting the architecture of Washington, D.C., that is all this Masonic architecture. This is where a lot of it is coming out of.
So Rob, you're saying that the degrees are not equal. Some degrees within Freemasonry are more critical than others?
Yes, that is without question. This is a point of confusion that many people are not aware of. The degree structure in the Scottish Rite is out of order. You hear people say all the time the 33rd degree, the 33rd degree. That's important. That's, honorary. You have to be invited to that. But the most important degree in the Masonic ritual is the 13th degree in the Scottish Rite, and it's the 7th in the York Rite. It's the recovery. Believe it or not, a lot of the degrees that come after that take place prior to that ritual. You go back in time. The end of the Masonic story, the end of the Grail quest, the recovery of the Golden Fleece, call it what you will, is the recovery of this lost word of the Master Mason. That's the end of the story. That's the end of the Masonic journey, which is the 13th in the Scottish Rite. I would argue it's the most important critical ritual of all Freemasonry, outside of maybe the Blue Lodge 3rd degree. And it is really, if you understand it and you understand what's going on in the Blue Lodge and how it relates, you understand so much more of the symbolism that's coming out of Blue Lodge Freemasonry, tying into this high degree. Literally, it was what the United States was literally forged around.
So Rob, this 13th degree inspired you. It drove you to write the book. But as we understand, the entire story for the book came to you in a dream. Is that right?
No. The Royal Arch of Enoch was a product of 20 years. The Royal Arch of Enoch was is a history book. I mean, it's not fiction. It's a factual book. What happened was, the way that book got started was, I know where you're going with this.
All right, wait. He just promoting this book, that Royal Arch book. That book is a decent book. Now, I said I was going to share, and I guess I use a couple of more minutes. I'm going on 2 hours here. I want to share a little bit because there's a lot of people on the internet. It's 2 levels of this. Maybe I should wait with this because it's 2 levels of this deception. And a lot of people, like a sister came on, excuse me, a sister came on and said Jesus didn't exist. Jesus didn't exist. Jesus never existed. And it's connected with this whole man becoming God doctrine. And I'm going to show y'all that through the works of Bart Ehrman. I'm going to show y'all that through the works of the History Channel, the Jesus Seminar, and different movement, because there's levels to this thing. And there's a movement within seminaries. Or what I would call the Jesus Seminar. Some scholars, biblical scholars, some of them, some people feel that they ain't on that level of scholarship, but I'm going to talk about the guy that started that and how they were teaching and how they were attempting to dismantle the word of God. To dismantle the word of God. I stopped the video. Type of 1 if y'all hear me. How they attempted to dismantle. Wait a minute. Is my internet acting up? Type of 1 if y'all can. Let me look at my phone. Look at this phone now. Type of 1 if y'all can hear me. I ain't got my headphones on, but all right. Y'all do hear me? All right. Where was I at? All right, maybe we'll pick up on that later on. I'm going to show you Jesus seminar, and I'm going to show y'all how it's 2 levels of this. How Freemasons because a lot of people are on the internet saying Jesus never existed. You got to connect it with the sun. So I'm going to take y'all back to some guys that was practicing the same craft of Freemasonry, and they connected Jesus with the sun, and they said this is nothing but astrological stuff that turned into, they made Jesus a real man, but Jesus is really the sun. I'm gonna take you back to some Freemasons in France and how they started that and where we got that from, and why so many people in the conscious community, influenced by esoteric doctrine, influenced by people studying the occult that come out of some lodges and stuff, dealing with them higher degrees and dealing with myths and magic, and want to transform you into God, and believe that if you keep worshiping a man called Jesus, thinking Jesus is something special, you're not realizing that you are a God. So I want to make sure I walk y'all all through that stuff so you can see that stuff, and it's definitely interesting. It's definitely interesting. And how do we as believers now deal with some of these doctrines where people are lying, saying certain things, when certain things came from higher degree work, esoteric work in certain Freemasons, Albert Pike, Manly P. Hall, Helen Blavatsky, and their influence on the History Channel, Zachariah Stitchett, Anunnaki, Ye Are Gods, Elijah Muhammad, More Science Temple, what the other guy said, D white folk wicked, D white folk wicked we chosen, that came about with One West. Wait a minute. And now y'all taking on some of their regalia because this was heavy in Harlem. These doctrines were heavy in Harlem. So One West ain't too far from where Malcolm and them was at. The whole Harlem was flooded with this stuff. This doctrine, Marcus Garvey, We the People, Black Power, all flooded with this stuff. How are they going to think they're going to be immune to that? How that brother going to tell me he wasn't touched by individuals, the craft? Abernathy, the whole AME church. How are you going to say this thing haven't been in our communities? It's impossible. So we're going to get into that, and we're going to see the levels that they've been warring with people, because I know people that's involved in apologetics and talking and sharing certain things, and there's some things that they don't know. They don't know the wars. The war's heavy. The war's on. The war's real. So it's a lot of people, they don't know who Blavatsky is. They don't know where this stuff come from. That's why I'm often tell people, I say, I study them dudes that gave you that stuff. Count Vonley and them talking about rulers of the empire. To him and his man is the one that started. He was the first one. According to Bart Ehrman, did Jesus exist? He was the first one to connect Jesus with the sun. So we got conscious folk in here, woke folk. Done picked up a little degree work. They don't know where it came from. They don't know nothing about it. Oh, Jesus never existed. Jesus was the sun. They knew that from back in the days. And then we got Dorothy Murdoch, Acharia S. And we got some quote-unquote free thinkers that are occultists to raise the Christ in you. The church don't want to resurrect the God in you. Don't want you to manifest and use your God powers. So we got a lot of people from those communities. They say they're atheists, but they're working for the occultists to push that. We're all one. These are just stories that they gave y'all out the Bible. Nothing mean what it's supposed to mean. And they start teaching that. Then they start telling you, Jesus is a symbol of the sun. This is the true meaning right here. And we'll explain some of that later on. I'll bring that up. I don't know, my internet, I just hit the 2-hour mark. My internet, I don't know, some people my internet might be acting up. Type of one if y'all can hear me. Jesus said, I am the way, yes, the truth. And they're like, no man. You can't put it all on Harlem, but no, Harlem. No, but we got to admit, when we start dealing with Harlem and Sinetta, when we start dealing with Harlem, well, not all on Harlem. I'm from the whole of New York, but a lot of this stuff came from Harlem. These was in the streets. We were having talks from back in the days. A lot of this stuff came up on the scene. That was the Mecca for Black folk, and all different type of ideas started coming together. Some little storefront churches, but we got some big churches that came up that have been influential in helping our community. Malcolm X and them was doing it over there. One West started over there. Harlem is important in the movement, in the consciousness. Dr. Ben and all of them up there, Dr. Ben's Denon, all of that stuff, it's a lot been going on. We cannot play. A lot been going on. So So we'll try to pick up with that later on. I'm gonna see if I'm gonna touch that or I'm gonna touch, because like I said, some of this stuff is gonna get, when we start getting into these books and all of this other stuff, I don't know. Some of these folk will take some stuff and run with it. Everything ain't for everybody. We're gonna definitely put that out there. If y'all want to get in touch with me, BereanTeach@gmail.com. If y'all want to put something on the Cash App, $Berean Teach. We appreciate y'all. We appreciate the support. And think about what's being said. We're gonna come back with a part 3, Occult Watch. All right, God bless.